Greig Fraser, cinematographer of Lion, as well as the upcoming Rogue One, just to throw that in there. You've been very busy this year. Let's talk about Lion and working with Garth Davis. What was your visual approach to this material?
You start any film by reading the script, of course. You don't sort of go into a film before reading a script and going, right, this has got to be like a rocketing, constantly moving single shot experience. You read the script and say, right, what does the film need to truly tell the best story? We sort of made sure that with the visual approach, primarily, with two countries, we made sure that we weren't going to get too complicated or too busy visually, because India is such a busy visual country that you don't want to sort of, you actually need to create simplicity in the images, and you need to create pauses and silences that the audience can kind of understand, So we tried to make sure that we didn't move the camera too much when it didn't need to, but at the same time, we were very honest with the fact that when Saru moved, we needed to move with him. When he and his brother were on the bicycle riding to the train station, we were there with them. We occasionally did sort of long lens pans, but that was less. We made sure we were kind of really with them. When we pulled out the zoom lens, or when we pulled out the long lenses, we tried to do that sometimes, distance ourselves emotionally from people. And a perfect example is Dev, as older Saru, walking home back to his house after having been to the supermarket buying textures and markers. We were on an incredibly long lens there, and we deliberately did that to try and make sure that we distance ourselves from that. So as an overall visual approach, we tried to just lockstep basically with that character. He was our center. He was our, he was our kind of central railway station, if you might. But so whatever emotions they were feeling, we then said, well, what is the very best lens, method of moving, lighting, location to actually to prove this, or to show this to an audience?
Right, and one of the things that struck me about watching the movie is that there's a lot of silence to it. Yeah. There's a lot of emphasis on the face of this main character, played as a young boy by Sunny Pawar, and as a young man by Dev Patel.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about visually representing the thoughts and the emotions of this character?
Sorry, you just cut out there and say the last part of that sentence.
Visually representing through close-ups and through lens choices, what's going on in the mind of this character.
Totally, because he runs the gamut throughout the entire movie, doesn't he? Like he runs the gamut of being fully in control of his destiny, to being so not in control of his destiny, to being in control again. Like he literally just flicks backwards and forwards as a child, and then as an adult. We meet him again as an adult, as a fully formed, red-blooded Aussie bloke that's drives a fast car and loves women, and basically is the kind of the quintessential Aussie guy. But then suddenly those things change when he not realizes, but just recalls that kind of memory. Those things come flooding back. It's one of the things that I love about cinematography and about movie making, and particularly about being able to work with the actors of the caliber that we are working with on a film like Lion. And that is that, the old adage of the camera loves them is just completely true. You put a camera on one of our actors' faces, that's the film right there. Everything else is kind of gravy on top of that. So to try and start backwards from that and try and tell the story from wide shots or from mid shots kind of doesn't make sense. You start on those faces, and that is your guide, and from there you then choose. Technically, we chose different lenses to tell different stories. We had, I don't know how technical you are or want to get, but we changed lenses between spherical and anamorphic depending on how we wanted the audience to feel.
Really? Can you dive a little bit more into that specifically?
Well, the film primarily was spherical. You know, we shot with Panavision spherical lenses, sort of vintage spherical lenses. But then we made sure we had one anamorphic lens that was our kind of our go-to lens. And there are times where, particularly during his descent into that world of, you know, map finding and madness that he descends into, that we found that if we used the anamorphic lens close to his face or to the back of his head, that it would feel literally like you're kind of in a bubble with him. You know, I don't know if you know what that feels like when you're kind of your brain is so preoccupied with something else that it feels like literally you could be in a shopping mall and it feels like you are walking in a bubble. And this particular lens, I feel, helped the audience kind of get into that world and feel like they were in that bubble.
It's very interesting. In terms of color and lighting, what were your thoughts?
Well, India is a very interesting place. You don't go into India and say, you know what, I'm going to change the color palette. I'm going to make all this blue when in fact it's brown. Like, I mean, first of all, on a film like ours, you couldn't have done that anyway, nor would you want to, frankly, because that place exists with such visual perfection. You know, evolution, or the evolution of that society, has just created just complete perfection when it comes to colors. Like, you walk around and the color palette is just incredible. So first of all, my first approach to that is just not to stuff that up, because that's a, you know, as a cinematographer, you make decisions about things, and that could be one of those decisions. Actually, let's not destroy that color. So that was a very big thing. I mean, it's a bit embarrassing as a cinematographer to say, but my first instinct was just not to stuff it up. But the second instinct was to also just make sure we captured that, because, you know, you have the choice in India of so many different angles. You put a camera anywhere on a street in India, I guarantee you it's very interesting. But unfortunately, if you put it in too many of the wrong places, you create the wrong feel for the audience. And so color-wise, it was very much a matter of trying to make sure that we were honest with the locations that we were in at the time.
Mm-hmm. As I mentioned earlier, you also worked on Rogue One this year, and I wanted to ask you this in the context of the differences between shooting a film like Lion, which is more character-based, a little quieter, and something like Rogue One, which is more effects-driven, set-piece-driven, action-driven. Is it more difficult to make a film like Lion visually interesting, or vice versa, or, you know, are they both just you know?
Well, it's funny. Some people have obviously asked me about Rogue One, which is fair enough, because it's apparently going to be quite an interesting, important film. I believe,
to say the least.
Yeah. But it's funny because, you know, I shot Lion and Star Wars back to back, and I prepped them both simultaneously and intertwined. You know, I prepped Star Wars, shot Lion, prepped Star Wars, shot some more Lion, went back. It was a real intertwining. That 2015 for me was a Lion Star Wars year. If you were to tell me that there's a massive difference between those two films, I would probably disagree with you. And I know it sounds ridiculous. I know it sounds like I've just had, you know, a few shots, but there's not much difference. You know, okay, yes, there's space battles in Star Wars. There's no space battles in Lion. You know, the fastest we go is probably 70 miles an hour in a train. That's as quick as we can go in that. But at its soul, both films fundamentally rely on characters and characters' interactions between each other and the situation they're placed in. So even though, yes, all the periphery is incredibly different on both movies. You know, where they go, how fast they do it, you know, the relationships to each other, the fact there's a kid in Lion that's not in. I think fundamentally they're identical. And this is the thing. I mean, I've actually blown people's minds by saying this, and maybe they do think I'm crazy, and maybe you do as well. But, you know, when you're standing there with an actor on set, regardless if you're at, you know, you're standing at a train station in India, or if you're in, you know, in Iceland filming, you know, Mads and, you know, his daughter, they are fundamentally the same process, you know. And as a cinematographer, I would always want to approach it in the same way. Now, the good thing about something like Star Wars, the scope, what that film needs, is far greater. So yes, it allows you to sort of be able to kind of take more liberties with reality as well, you know, frankly. But fundamentally, at its core, I think, well, this is the way I approach life and I approach my films. They are at the core those characters, and if I've in any way distracting you from those characters, then I've kind of not done my job properly.
Right. Well, there is a wide variety to the films that you've shot in recent years. Just to name a couple of them: Zero Dark 30, Bright Star, Foxcatcher. You know, so I mean, what attracts you to the material that you decide to shoot?
I think fundamentally, it's I have to want to go and watch that movie.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I need to. You know, I'm very time poor right now with 3 children under the age of 5. So, you know, for me to want to go and watch a movie requires like a big event, big movie, because, you know, it means that, you know, I can't spend time with my kids and you know, it's a big event to want to go and see a film. So all of those movies that I've shot over my career are films that I've heard the byline for, read the script and gone, yep, I want to go and see this movie. You know, guarantee you, if I didn't shoot Lion, I'd be the first in the line to go and see it. If I hadn't shot Rogue One, I'd be the first, well, maybe the second after, you know, after a million other fans than I am. But like, I would be first in the line to go and see that movie. So that fundamentally is what attracts me to it. And I'm attracted to films that, as I said before, create interesting characters and delve me into a world that is characterful.
Mm-hmm. Working with Garth Davis, too many G names. This was his feature film debut, but I don't know if you would really know that just to look at it. What was that collaboration like between the two of you?
I've known Garth for more than 20 years.
Wow.
And he and I both started at the same time. He was a graphic designer. I was a photographer. He then became a director's assistant. I then became a studio dog's body at a studio in Melbourne. And so we kind of started together. No, we started together. And, you know, what he learned, I learned. You know, and what I learned, he learned. And then he went off and did things. I went off and did things. But we've always stayed best friends. I mean, he and I are like best buddies. But, you know, we've been knowing each other for 20 plus years. We kind of know each other almost better than our partners know each other. And so the collaboration was incredible. I mean, when he called me about this movie, I mean, he told me the story, but I was like, yeah, dude, if you're doing it, I'm in there, because we have such a symbiotic relationship. And hopefully what that does is it allows him as a director to concentrate on his characters and his performance, so that, you know, he can get performances out of those actors the best possible way. And, you know, together then we also then can work on the visuals. And he's kind of like this multi-talented kind of guy who's really incredible at his performances, incredible at understanding dialogue and script, but also incredible visually. You know, he's an incredible visual partner that I know that I can go, God, you know, I'm not really sure. Like, should we really be moving the camera handheld at this point? Shouldn't we be kind of slowing it down? He'd be like, yeah. Or, no, actually, keep it going for a bit longer, because I think we need to then cut to a static shot that doesn't move at all. We're handheld, hard cut to static shot on the train, him sleeping. And you go, yeah, cool. So he's also incredibly aware of the language of cinema as well. And that's what I particularly love about working with Garth.
Well, it's a great movie and a beautifully shot one at that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Greig Fraser, thank you so much, and congratulations on both of your films. It was a pleasure talking with you.
All right. Thanks so much. See you later.
You're welcome. Have a good one.